Alrighty. I believe that we are live. Very good, very good, very good. Though it looks like... Let me see here. Is my camera off? Oh. Very interesting. I'm not even sure that my... Oh, my mic is going. Okay. Okay, there we go. Alright then, there we go. Alright, very good. Okay. Well, we'll just stream with no camera anyway. That'll make for better video viewing experience, I think, regardless. Because you don't have to see my ugly mug. And you know, I don't really think that I have an ugly mug per se, but the lighting in my studio isn't the best, so we'll just leave it at that, and we'll get back to this painting here. So let's switch over. I just made this thumbnail. Here's the state of things, as it were, and we've got. This has progressed quite a bit, actually, I think, since I last streamed. I'm going to do a little layer organization here, just so I can kind of show off the various stages of this painting. Okay. So here was the undersketch. Obviously very rough, but I think most of the primary elements are kind of still in there, except that I've obviously changed the position somewhat, and the throne that he's sitting on has gone from being sort of a blocky stone obelisk looking thing to this kind of desiccated tree. And the idea with that is basically just sort of representational of like a tree of knowledge kind of motif. So nothing too groundbreaking there, but I also just generally have more fun with those kind of organic forms. Speaking of which, I think today what we're going to focus on is what kind of design to do for these horns here. And I think I was having some trouble just figuring out like what color they should be, and you know, whether I want to. When I make them black, they look like rabbit ears or something, and I think that issue could be resolved maybe by changing the shape of the horns a little. So that's what I think I'm going to do here today. Give it a little shape, a little texture. I'm probably just going to go in here and grab... Before we color it, just kind of play around a little bit with some kind of textures and ridges and little like indentations. Just trying to give this some more visual interest and give it a little bit of pizzazz, you know. I don't really have much of a goal beyond that. But we're going to go ahead and... So this kind of curly... Not curly, that's not really the right word, but this sort of horn design is a little bit more evocative of like a satyr or something, not necessarily a demon. But we're going to try this out for a minute regardless and just see how it goes. And one thing I'm really enjoying this kind of painting process with very few layers. I basically just have layers for so for example, I've got layers for these foreground figures. I don't know what that layer is. The layer for the primary figure, there's like a background layer, and that's really just to prevent the colors from getting muddy kind of up against each other, because the way that the oil paint brushes in Clip Studio work is that they sort of like smudge with whatever colors are around them as you're painting, which I think is a lot of fun it's certainly not like the best workflow probably for like client work or anything that would require like really careful layer management and editing and stuff, because you're kind of in order for this to make sense as a process, you sort of need to have most of your elements on the same layer for take advantage of like the blending and the and everything. That opportunity doesn't exactly present itself if you don't allow it to. So what do I think of that? I think that's okay, but I think I would prefer if there was kind of like maybe like a big one here. Maybe his horns sort of mirror the tree a little bit in that they have this kind of antler-like quality. Like a branching quality to them. I know I just like wiped all that out, but that's sort of like the fun, I think, of working in this mode, is being able to just sort of like wipe it off the canvas, like whatever you happen to be working on, just start anew. And I think it's like, for one, I enjoy the kind of organic, flowing, tree-like nature of a horn design like this, or an antler design, whatever this becomes. And it also gives something more of like a unifying element to the piece. So if we're looking at this right now, obviously, and I think this is going to change, but the color scheme between the tree and the demon are really similar. And I think what I might do to resolve that is bring a little more blue and gray into the tree to kind of show that it is sort of dying or in a state of decay, and bring a little more warmth into our demon fellow, almost as if he's kind of siphoned off this the energy of this tree of knowledge a little bit to fuel his own ambitions, as it were. Okay. Yeah, I like this idea. Maybe takes a little more there. Okay. And I do want to bring in some blue on the horns, I think, as well. Though how best to do that, it's difficult to say. I'm still very much in an experimental phase with this workflow. And so, I oftentimes find myself just kind of going in and haphazardly adding color, because I'm not sure, like, how much of it will, blend with the rest of whatever's going on here, and how much will sort of get lost in the sauce, as it were. So I'm just kind of going in and blending this in a little bit with the blending tool. And I don't love the kind of smudginess that this creates, but if I go back over it with other colors, now some of that blue is sort of mixed in. And I think I mentioned this last time, but this is not an efficient digital workflow. That's not really the point of what I'm doing. The point of what I'm doing is to capture a little bit of the magic, if you will, of traditional without having to deal with the mess. And learning to use the materials. And like I tried acrylic not long ago, and I really struggled with the mixing part of it, and that's in part because I'm using terrible acrylics, but I'm also like, do I want to, if I invest in decent acrylics, then I should invest in decent brushes, I should invest in better canvas. It's kind of a slippery slope, and there's no guarantee that that's actually what I want. And the other thing is, like, I just want access. I want access to the colors with relative ease. That being said, technically speaking, all of this kind of nonsense with the blending blending like real oil paint or whatever. Totally unnecessary in a digital format. I could just be grabbing the colors I need and sort of doing it that way, but this just feels more fun. And there's more opportunity for those sort of moments of discovery where you're like, oh yeah, that does look like a pretty cool kind of color combination. I really enjoy how that makes me feel. I really enjoy the vibes it gives off, you know? I like the shapes that emerged out of that. And that is not always, depending on what your workflow is, not always something that's easy to get out of digital. So that's what we're doing. Anyway, I got a few views on the last video, so after the fact. So we're trying this new time, seeing if anybody jumps in here. Hopefully my chat is working on my streaming platform, and if anybody pops in, I'll be able to see them and say hello, perhaps. If not, you can always catch these later, of course. And again, I'll be doing more of these going forward, and hopefully more consistently, so that my pieces don't go from like bare bones sketch to, you know, pretty. I would say this is a pretty far along piece, given that I really don't know what my ceiling is on this, like how far I want to take it. Because I think I mentioned last time that I'm sort of envisioning these being kind of pieces that, you know, exist not just as their own like little prints or anything, but as proxies for magic cards. This one is Demonic Tutor, and you know, when you print something out at card size, you obviously lose a lot of detail, and there's something of an argument to be made that if you really want to make your workflow efficient, you just leave that detail out in the first place. I'm having enough fun with this piece that I don't think that's really the mentality I want to have about it. I really want it to be its own piece that just happens to fit the theme. It's sort of like using the card as a prompt, and I think it's a great prompt. I think there's a lot of storytelling to be done. The idea of this demonic tutor. So I think last time I hadn't really developed any of these guys out super far, but the dudes in the bottom, I'm kind of, so originally, and I'm rambling a little, apologies, I had sort of intended to fully color all of these characters, or even make them like little demons themselves, like they're taking a seminar from this guy. But what I ended up doing is I painted them all in this kind of blue color, which I did for this guy as well. And the goal of that was basically just to have this sort of cool undertone beneath the painting, so as I painted over, some of that would shine through. And that just kind of looked cool. Like it kind of it sort of brought about this idea, like what if these guys were sort of astral projecting, or they were spirits or something, and the spirits are coming to take part in this guy's little lecture series here. Lecture series on being an evil demon wizard. Or something like that. And I just thought that was a fun idea. So that's sort of the vibe that I think we'll stick with. And then I think sort of one of the next challenges with this is going to be obviously the background, the sky. I've never been great with painting backgrounds in general, but also the sky, getting that feel. I might need to find some brushes that work well for that. But then figuring out how I want to do these guys. Do I want to make them really wispy? Do I want to add some sort of like blur effects to them? Maybe like some kind of mist that sort of surrounds them. I've kind of played around with that idea. Basically something to enhance the ethereal quality of them while still capturing that they are sort of like lighted in a semi-realistic, or lit lighted. I'm not sure lighted is a word, that they are lit in a semi-realistic way. So it retains some of this kind of like value differentiation. Yeah, so that's the plan as it stands. And I don't know if last time the music was really coming through, but again, we're just jamming to the Tristram theme. It's a great little track to draw demons to, of course. Hope everybody's new year has kicked off well. I just had a filling done yesterday. A very small hole in my tooth had formed. It's not bothering me, but yeah, I was like, I got my teeth cleaned, and then the dentist was like, yeah, we're not even gonna numb you for this, because, you know, this 15-minute procedure isn't worth you being numb for like 3 hours in your mouth. So there was only like one time when it was even remotely painful, and they filled it right in, because what they have to do is they have to, like, if you have a hole in your tooth and they just go and fill it in, there's like, you know, weird little cracks in there or whatever, so they have to drill in there a little bit before they administer it. And it's not a pleasant feeling to have your tooth, like, you know, drilled into. I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but yeah, it's not fun. This is the first time I remember having a filling done, though, which is funny. But basically, my new dentist, was like, "Hey, it looks like you have one of these on the same tooth on the other side." Like, somebody had already done that, and I have like no memory of this. Like, I don't know if it was when I got my wisdom teeth out or what, but they just sort of like went in there. I was like, I don't remember this ever happening, so must have happened a long time ago. And when they did my wisdom teeth, I was completely put under. Okay, yeah, I kind of like how this is going, but I think, again, I do want to differentiate the colors a little bit. Maybe more of like a brown. I don't know. We're gonna try this. We're gonna try this out. And again, I have no idea, like, if anybody else like works like that, like if anybody really like uses clips like painting tools as like a traditional painting thing, because I feel like people that do like digital painting like this, you know, they're either old school like Photoshop people, or they use like one of those programs that's like really about painting, like Corel or something. Whereas this one, I mainly, like, I just use this oil paint flat brush because it feels good. It's got like a nice, can have a nice edge to it, but it, you know, doesn't like limit you really. Like, I feel like the oil paint, like the round brush that they have, is like really goes crazy on the blending. Like, I don't know if I want to demonstrate this on video. It's like, that's actually not too bad. That's not as bad as I thought. But maybe it's just hard to tell with, yeah, it just, actually, maybe I'll work with this a little bit for these horns, just to give it kind of a smooth feel and eliminate some of the roughness. Actually, I was about to say, maybe I just haven't worked with this in a while. But when you're doing this from scratch, it's tough to get to establish a kind of like edge quality to the piece. All right, how does that look? That looks okay. I think we keep this and we do the other side and we sort of see how that looks. And the great thing about digital is that you can always just go back in and fix it, you know? Just go back and redo it. And then you get to see the possibilities on the canvas just right in front of you. Okay. I would hate that. We're going to darken this a little bit. And I think I need to get... I kind of been going with like a cool shadow on these. And this is sort of like a warm thing that I've got going on here. So, yeah, I kind of like... It's like there are certain brushes... And this is like kind of true in any medium, but it's especially true for certain digital things or like blending stumps or things like that, where having like a really well established under drawing or painting or having like the values and the shapes and everything sort of figured out already and then going in with certain tools is really how they ideally function. Like, and maybe that's the case with this like oil paint brush, because it feels better than it usually does, and I think that's maybe because there's already sort of like an established thing going on here. Alright, so we're going to try adding in a little bit of that blue like I talked about. And I'm using like very rudimentary kind of complementary color scheme, because I don't understand color theory. I can't be bothered to look it up. I just know that like blue and orange, or blue goes with like orange and yellow kind of. You know, you want to have these like sort of accompanying colors, and you can do, it's like one is in the light, one is in the shadow kind of thing. And that's about the extent of my understanding of this stuff. And we'll kind of, I'm gonna kind of blend his head like into this, so there's sort of this like yellow here. It's like going up into there. It's really hard to tell if that looks good, honestly, though. I have no idea. It's very muddy. Some elements of this are quite muddy. Maybe it's partly the colors I chose, like browns and yellows. Like this guy sort of just looks like he's made of mud a little bit. And that's okay. That is a-okay. Because I said so, because I'm the artist. And if it's okay with me, then that's really all that matters. Unless, you know, of course, you're working for a client and they have very specific requirements of you need to be met. I started another painting sort of using this method that is actually for a different but very similar magic card called Vampiric Tutor. And this one I didn't want to have an explicitly sort of like sinister vibe. Like, it is a black magic card, it is a demon, but I was like, I want it to be, you know, and I think I may have discussed this last time, I want it to be a little more like he's contemplating like the consequences of providing this knowledge to these mortals that are arrayed before him. Whereas the vampiric one, I really want it to be like this vampire is leading his ward or his what do they call it when a vampire has like a thrall? His thrall into the belly of hell. Like he's gonna send him down a dark path. And the dude is both kind of like excited and scared by this proposition. Like that's the idea with the piece, and it'd probably be easiest to show off or assess whether I've been successful with that vibe so far by actually showing the piece. Maybe I'll do that. Let's see. Okay, that doesn't show up. Where is it? Vampiric Tutor. There we go. Yeah, so this is the piece as it stands. What do I like about it? I like so far the little faces. This is kind of a later addition, but I wanted there to be some kind of stone element and more vampiric element. So I just wanted to light something, with this torch and kind of play around with that. So that was really fun. Then there's this guy. That's the tutor. This is the dude. And, very rough painterly sort of stages on this. But I wanted to give him kind of like apprehension, have these, big bags under his eyes. Maybe make him a little more pale even. Then again, I don't want to make him too pale because I do want him to contrast with his vampiric tutor over here. And then I want to work out, what the design of his accoutrements are a little more. But vampires, they always have a little pizzazz, a little more drip, than others might. Whereas this, this dude is like a just like toga party naked guy who is really committed to his task, perhaps so committed that he's killed this tree in his quest for knowledge, and now he sits upon it as a beacon to his own lust for knowledge. The sacrifice of this majestic being, this tree. So now there's a monument. Anyway, I think with these streams, what I'm not going to pretend that I have any qualifications or even desire to teach or tutorialize what I'm doing. Okay, tutor. But what that means is that I think having sort of a distinct goal for each stream is probably best. And what I mean by that is a goal for whatever the piece is that's being worked on. So in this case, I'm sort of like, I think I'd like to kind of whittle away on these horns, sort of whittle it in like a literal sense, even like almost like carving wood. And having a painting or a drawing that is in like a finished enough state that I can sort of like noodle on it without worrying about taking it in a ruinous direction. Kind of where I'm at, because these horns, I was not satisfied with them at all when we started. Now I'm like sort of satisfied with them, but the issue that I'm noticing is that they are definitely distracting from his face. Now that I'm like sort of looking at this a little more, I don't love that element. I don't like how distracting they are, and they're sort of like mimicking the tree maybe a little bit too much. I don't know if I hate that, to be honest, but that's just how it's looking so far, in my estimation. We'll switch back to the flat brush a little bit. The flat brush, yeah, like I mentioned before, gives you a little bit more, or a little bit less of the blendiness. And so you get these kind of streaks, and the brush strokes remain a little more defined when you're using it. I don't think I'll ever get tired of these guitar licks. They're just so beautiful. Like, so beautiful and simple. I think it's the best, you know, in my opinion, it's like the best thing that Blizzard ever is responsible for making. Not that they you know, which is a funny thing to say. It's just sort of my snooty opinion about it. Like, I like their games. I like Diablo as a whole, like the first one and the second one. But if they never existed and it was just this song, or like if this was, you know, if they only ever made Diablo 1 and then they, you know, closed down or whatever, as long as this song existed, it would have been worthwhile. Alright, that's somewhat coming along here. So maybe I work on defining his hands a little bit more. The thing is that I'm struggling with a little bit with the fingers, or this thumb in particular, is like the thumb is technically in shadow, like, you know, it's sort of like underneath all this stuff. And because it's in shadow, like I don't want it to, you know, blend in too much with the rest of this, the rest of his face. And maybe that's not as big an issue as I think it is, but it feels like a problem. I sort of gave him this like weird little chin thing over here, and maybe that doesn't need to exist either, because I feel like it just sort of makes things messier. So I think what I'm going to do is cut that off, go back to his original sort of chinny chin here. Let's give it a bit of a jut. Yeah, I think that's better because it creates a sense, a greater sense of clarity with the. It almost makes this like more negative space. Whereas, you know, maybe if it seems to have it like this, and then it. Maybe like this whole thing is sort of like a beard, like a spike beard sort of thing that he's got going on here. Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that. We can work with that. Yeah, it just gives a little more visual interest to this little like center point right here. So we'll keep that and rock and roll with that. We like that. Say we as if there's anyone in here, but yet again, streaming alone. At least that's what I think, as my chat doesn't seem to be producing anything. I can't tell from here if anybody's watching this. I don't know if it shows me that in my like stream thing, which is totally fine. says there's one person watching, but I don't know. If you're watching, put something in the comments so I can tell. You don't have to. It's okay. It's all right. Okay. Anyway, let's keep noodling away on this. Like, the thing that I think I'm going to ultimately struggle with is how best to, like, or, like, to what degree I want to render everything. Again, I think some of the best advice I ever got in this matter was from Stephen Zapata, and essentially, like, a piece is sort of finished when, or it can be considered finished, or a worthy goal for considering it finished is that the focal point of the piece, or focal points, are more rendered than the other stuff, right? So it's like, if the background was rendered to the level of detail that this guy is right now, but he was rendered to the level of detail of the background, if we switched those, that would not be successful for the purposes of this piece, right? That would be bad. That being said, I don't think we're in any danger of that happening. That specific problem might. But, let's say that I really went ham on a couple of these guys and really rendered them out and left him sort of in the dust, left the main guy in the dust. That would not be appropriate for what we're going for here. He's the demonic tutor. He's the focal point. Whereas, it really depends on, what kind of vibe you want out of the piece. Whereas this piece, for example, I could see myself making the background character, like have the student be sort of more of the focal point, and then the vampiric tutor kind of like bleed into the background, and render out the cave a little more, just to enhance this idea of this like dark descent kind of thing. I think that could be fun, but it's not necessary that I do that. It's not necessarily the best approach. The other way you can think about it is just render everything to the max. Just go crazy nuts on it. And I guess that's valid. That's also valid. I'm not going to do that, but it's valid if that's the way you want to approach things. In this case, I'm not doing this for a client or anything. I'm kind of my own boss here. And so I haven't given full thought to how do we transfer this piece to a playing card format. And what I think I'd like to do is make these, basically, if you're familiar with Magic, you'll know that usually the cards have like borders on them, and then there are like often special art cards that are borderless, and so the art like stretches around essentially the like text boxes, and so I think those are generally pretty cool. And if we're gonna get these proxies printed up so I can sell them, that is probably the approach that we're gonna take. And so what that would mean is just making sure that this guy, for example, like nothing that is necessary to his design or whatever, will be at the very edges of the page, because that's generally sort of like your bleed area, and you want to avoid putting detailed stuff there. I think it'd be fine for a piece like this where things sort of just like bleed out. And based on the size that we have to work with, we may not even get some of these little dudes in there with him on the card. This card's like 2.5 by 3.5 inches, I think, is a standard Magic card. So, pretty small. We'd be working with a much smaller area, obviously. Which is fine. I think, for a piece like this one, you might only get like this this interaction in the middle. And I'm fine with that. It is pretty cool to like look at and compare like the full art piece of something like a book cover or a magic card, for example, to what you get. Let me just save this. To what you get in the final product, because there are usually a lot more details, a lot more interesting little tidbits to find going around. So at this point, I've sort of abandoned, I think, that the horns for the moment. I'm just going to leave them as is, and I'm going to kind of define this cloak a little more, and maybe even give him some fun props or something as well. I don't know what those will be. I sort of had like a chain sort of belt thing on him in the sketch, and that might be something I need to fish out some reference for or whatever, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and maybe we cross it right now. Maybe I just kind of slap some stuff down. Maybe I do it on a separate layer because I don't want to make this all muddy. If he was just chained to this tree like one of those protesters, he's protesting the chopping down of the tree by the evil corporation. So maybe there's, I don't know what these are. They're just sort of like little designy elements that maybe he's got some kind of satchel here. And I already gave the other dude a satchel in that other painting. I don't want to give him a satchel as well. Maybe just this chain. It's got like spikes on it or something. Like it's some sort of punishment. Ooh, yeah, he's punished. He's bound here for the forbidden knowledge that he has sought and still seeks to disseminate. I kind of like that. I'm just testing this out. What if it was like something wrapping like all around him like this? Is that interesting? It makes him look a little Jesus-y. I don't really want him to look like Jesus. That's not really the point of him. Like, that's not the type of sacrifice he made, Not that I'm like, hugely knowledgeable about Christian mythology, but this guy's not a martyr. His sacrifice is not for martyrdom. Maybe he thinks himself a prophet, but he is not one. Or maybe he is, I don't know. Maybe that's his shtick. I feel like something here should be like sort of like a metal, I don't know, some kind of focal point on his, quote unquote belt. Maybe it's actually over here. So it's like there. I have no idea what I'm doing with this. It's fine. Watercolor. Just kind of like smooth these out a little bit. I'm trying to stay like fairly zoomed out from this so that I don't get bogged down in the details. And you'll hear that advice a lot. Don't zoom in too much. And that is sort of like an admonition against, like, you really want to have the big picture sort of figured out first. But it's not something you should never do. Certainly there's times when zooming in is appropriate, and I'm mainly doing it so that I don't realize how crap this looks up close, frankly. And that's that's somewhat self-deprecating and tongue-in-cheek, but it is like a legitimate thing too. It's like if you let yourself sort of like fall into the trap of seeing this sort of mid-stage project as it's like obviously this is not the final quality that it's going to be, and that's okay. That is just fine. What I did with this, though, I realized I kind of covered up his little like ridge here, and I don't like that. I think I'm actually going to take this out because I liked having his like spine sort of showing back here. And we're gonna redo that. Like, I don't know if it's like you probably had those. If you're a digital artist, you definitely had those occasions where you were like working on something and then you realize you like destroyed a piece of it, and there's no way. There's no way to get it back. It's like a layer that you deleted ages ago, and you don't have a version of the file that you can pull to like save it, or you just like deleted it by accident and then saved and then forgot that you did that, and you close the program and you're screwed. Happens all the time. Happens, as they say, to the best of us, and I'm not that by any stretch. So I'm sure it's happened to you once or twice, whoever you might be out there. Oftentimes, though, with that, you end up sort of... I find that usually when it happens to me, as long as I have enough passion for whatever that thing happens to be, it usually comes back stronger. Usually comes... I get back what I lost and then some. Because you sort of like... It's almost like you rehearsed what you wanted, and then when you make it again, it's... as long as it's not like too far gone, obviously, but when you make it again, it just feels a little more fully realized. Or it can, anyway. It has the potential. So yeah, I do like having this little bony neck there. I don't know if I'm going to leave it as is. Now it looks a little... I said all that, and this looks worse than it looked before, I think. But that's okay. I'm not going to make excuses, but streaming and doing this is somewhat difficult, I think. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Especially working with, as I said, a newer medium to you. A newer approach. It doesn't matter, not necessarily medium in this case, because digital is something I'm relatively familiar with, Yeah, things are happening here. Things be happening. We like what we got going down up in here. I don't mind it. At any rate. Okay. Okay, let me see here. We like what we got going down up in here. All right, I'm streaming about 50 minutes. I want to keep these at a minimum of 1 hour. So we're gonna continue for just a little bit longer, and then I'll hop off here, and we will go from there. Okay. Oh, this is not what I want on my screen. I need to see. I need to be able to see. Yeah, the other thing is, like, when I'm streaming, there is a distinct danger of over-noodling certain areas, as I may have mentioned, because I'm not fully paying attention. And that can be dangerous. That can be very dangerous. I mean, not actually very dangerous, you know, it's like, what are the... It's not like I'm going to get eaten by a tiger or something because I wasn't paying attention and I over-rendered or blotted out something that I didn't actually intend to. For some reason, I like this. I like this sort of like yellow color for demons. Like red is very cliche. Red is also sort of like difficult to, can be difficult to get like a full range of values in, I've found. Can be a little finicky. So, that's why. That's not why we're using yellow. I just thought it would be fun for this guy. Because he's not like explicitly evil per se. He's just like, you know, he's got his issues, but he's not evil. His knowledge has certainly been used for evil. I don't know that that's something he struggles with, but he certainly acknowledges it. I don't know if you can hear that clicking. That's me tapping the undo button on my tablet here. I think, yeah, it's almost like doing this while streaming. It feels like it takes like twice as much energy. It's not like just a little add-on. It's like talking through this. You know, some people are real pros at this kind of thing. Obviously, being like a really good, really experienced artist helps, and I'm not that. So, at any rate, yeah, this can be a tiring experience. But that's okay, because I'm really enjoying it. That being said, I really have enjoyed working on this piece as well as the other one I showed off, the Vampiric Tutor. These have been really fun. And the fun isn't all that matters, but I'd say for art, it's like most of what matters. It's like, what's the point of doing it or making it if it's not fun for somebody involved, right? Like, fun or meaningful or whatever, but somebody should get some kind of gratification from it. Otherwise, yeah, there's not much point to doing it, because you can get gratified in other ways. You know, you can get some ice cream, or go to the beach. You know, sit outside by some trees, or play video games. I guess video games is sort of like art, though. And maybe ice cream is sort of like art, depending on the culinary prowess of the, you know, the ice cream maker involved. I was trying to think of like what the term is for that. I think there might be. What am I thinking? You know, the word is for an ice cream maker. An ice cream skateer. That's not correct, but that's okay. And these folds, I am not doing my due diligence on these, that's for sure. I'm probably mussing them up more than is necessary, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll just thought I was using blue here. Did I think that? This is what I was saying. Like sometimes you get too lost in the sauce, you know. When you get too lost in the sauce, you start to make weird little errors in judgment, where you start doing things without making any judgments. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not good. There's no clear-cut right or wrong to any of this. I mean, there can be, but you have to set the parameters for what's right and wrong. There's no clear-cut way to set the parameters for any given piece. You know, it's like sometimes other people set the parameters for you, and that's easy. You can sometimes infer the parameters based on how you came to the conclusion that you needed to do the piece. So, for example, if you came to the conclusion that you needed to do the piece because somebody offered to pay you to do it, then you just let them set the parameters for success. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to deal with the, you know, everything awful that comes along with working for other people. It's like one of the best and worst things that we have to do as human beings. Work for and with other people. Like the history of humanity is much more about cooperation, I think, than it is about warfare and bloodshed and conflict. That being said, we often cooperate to do things that are like horrible. So, you know, it's a little bit of both. Can't have one without the other. That's looking like something, I don't know. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Things are happening. This piece is slowly but surely coming together. It's another hour in the bag on this fella. And I think we are going to call it right there and say adieu, bid adieu to you. Anybody's watching this still. So with that, I'm gonna hop off here, I believe. Let me just double check. I don't think we had anybody join, but we will lose the music here shortly. All right. Yep. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna hop off. Hopefully somebody finds this later and enjoys watching along, and we'll see you next time. I will probably be continuing this piece, or maybe we'll work a little bit on this guy, or maybe we'll do some concepting for the next one, so I can paint away on these in peace, and we can just sketch and doodle and have some fun. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time, and yeah, make sure to keep on drawing and painting out there, and don't let the spooky vampires get you. Ooh, very spooky. Look at those big teeth. Ooh.